It's as cold as the frogs and what's out here.
We're now live streaming. Jeppy, before you start saying stuff you shouldn't say.
Is it cold in there?
It is chilly. It's not summer anymore.
Lovely and warm in Featherston. Featherston's really warm.
Yeah, except I got no water.
Right, we still have a quorum, and it's still waiting on 2, but we might start. Otherwise, we'll drift backwards at a rate of knots. Alistair's back as well. Good. All right, guys, we'll reconvene the meeting. And now we have considering D1, the action items report. Do we have a mover to receive the report? Pam, seconded Councillor Maynard. All those in favour, please raise your hand. All those against, the motion is carried. So we've got that in front of us, and I assume you've spent your lunchtime reading over it again. Councillors, do we have any questions? I'm sure there'll be a few, because there's actually quite a few items still on there. So I have one question of Russell regarding the Taurua item 203, road now vested PE documents to be released. Have they been released? That was in November.
Yeah, Mayor Alex, road again, reference?
Item number 203, Taurua Junction release of publicly excluded. In November, they were saying to be released, just checking that they have been released and we can close that item.
I'd have to check on that.
Cool.
All right.
Cool. If we could, we should get that done. Yeah. Any other questions, councillors? There's another one there that I thought had been done as well. So just one moment.
Was that 739?
Oh, let's go down to that.
Oh no, it's the third one on there. So it's the one from the 10th of February 2021 about Featherston and that.
Yes. Yeah, that's that.
It must have been done by now.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, I think there's a couple more in there that probably need to be scrutinised.
What was 739? Can somebody just clarify that one for me a little bit? I just
there was an unformed road in Featherston that it turned out that someone had already built on.
Right.
And that we required to change the paper road to allow for that property to be compliant, and that was passed.
So that's no longer open. That's a closed.
It depends on whether it's been resolved with the owner and the purchase has been completed.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Russell will be able to inform us of whether or not that had occurred.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. That my last meeting on that was with prospective purchasers of the land involved, in terms of it being an example of unusual roading portion, and it was discussion around payment for receiving the portion of land. So I'll have to check on that further.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks, Russell.
Yeah. 406 has been done, hasn't it? We passed the rates. They had the meeting.
Yes, that's the one I was thinking. Yeah. Yeah, 406 is actioned.
Yeah.
So 534 on the spatial plan has been actioned.
Or is some of that going to come back into the new planning?
It will, but that's not to do with the spatial plan. The
Okay.
spatial plan's complete. Lee.
Yes, item number 636. It says here to remove myself from the Assets and Services Committee. I was never on the committee, and so I can't see why I'd be removed because I was never on there in the first place. So
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Let's just, we've got the in the Mayor's report the confirmation of positions anyway, so let's be over it.
I'd actually like to see that number A removed altogether from the action or task details, because I was never on there, so it looks as though I've been removed for some strange reason.
Yeah, I think
Misdemeanor.
the word might be wrong there, Lee, because but they had actually put you on there, so they put you on there, but you said that no, and then
so it was never agreed, and by putting me on there, it effectively meant it was a full council on assets and services, which made no sense.
So could we just
never officially on to be officially off?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, Steph, to just confirm the accuracy of that action item and adjust as needed.
What number?
636.
Yeah.
Yes, I can do that. I think it was like was said there that it was in the proposed appointments that Councillor Hay was going to be on the assets and services. So it was just noting that we would be adopting those proposed appointments, but with that removal, so it would basically have you not on the committee, which was, I believe, the current state anyway. But we can certainly seek clarity around that.
So I'd appreciate if you adjust that because it doesn't look right to me. I have one other thing, maybe for Russell, a question. I think at FAR we'd requested to have a policy on what to do with land, particularly around Greytown, where properties were encroaching on the berms. And we had one case where in East Street where the people did buy back at a very low cost, and we asked for a review of that policy so that if it comes up again, should that be on an action item, Alex, or?
I'm wondering whether it's an action item on council or whether that's in a subcommittee, because I do recall that being an action item. I think it might be for your P&R.
Okay, maybe Pam, we can, you know what I'm talking about, Pam, don't you?
Yeah, berms and odd pieces of land around Greytown. And,
yeah.
Russell?
Yeah, good prompt question, Councillor Hay. It has, for example, last year, the tidying up and strategy forward on it for resolving portions of irregular bits of land within road reserve where people may have fences on them or park buildings, or they want to seek purchase. It's thrown up the past topic of the rationalisation and developing strategy. So that's that with governance as a tricky project to unify and sort out. Hence, with Karen now we've got Amanda, but knowing that there's a lot of work in that space, and we're trying to find a way forward on it at the strategy forward level, as well as deal with individual portions of land. So it is on our radar, but it involves the componentry of easements, uplift of road designation, land purchase, advertising and sale, and settling on a price. So there's about 4 or 5 components within that.
Thanks, Russell. I just wanted to make sure it hasn't slipped off the radar, but obviously you are looking at. I know it's quite a complicated piece of work, so I do appreciate that. Thanks.
Councillor, sorry, Lee, Councillor Plummer, you had your hand up there.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Alex. Couple. I'm just going through. Couple. The first one was. Oh God, I've lost it. Where is it? sorry. Where is it? 639 about the annual report. So Pippin and Brenda were going to email any questions about the annual report or questions for queries about it. Just wondering whether that's been done or whether that still needs to be there.
I think
I don't believe it needs to be there any longer.
no, the annual report's been passed, so
No, that was as a result of that, because
Yeah.
Pip and Brenda had queries about it, and you were going to email Katrina, see whether those queries came through and whether we need to know anything what those queries were. But if not, can we close that one?
I didn't receive any queries, and
Okay.
we have finalised the annual report now. So assume that Brenda and Pip didn't have any further comments.
Because they're just both on the same day as we passed the annual report. So there was that one. And then the other one was the subdivision of West Street in Greytown, 555. I'm pretty sure the community board agreed with the removing the sale and purchase authority of it.
yeah. And we
So that's
passed
been-
that in council.
Yeah, so that can be closed as well.
Cool. Jippy.
Oh, look, yes, I had 639 on too, and Alice has brought it up. Sorry, I just didn't lower my hand. Thank you.
I've got one question that's not on here, but is still an open item. What's the situation with the vacant quarry that was offered back under the Public Works Act on Ward's Line? What's the status of that?
Alex, I can answer that if you like. We've had a contamination report done. We decided to go ahead and get that done because if it worked out good, we'd obviously get some more money than what the property had been valued for. That came back with some contamination. So at this stage, we've engaged a real estate agent, and it will be coming on the market shortly.
So what you're saying is that the previous owner or his agent have not taken up the offer. Yeah.
Yes, correct. Well, actually, they couldn't take up the offer because they weren't actually direct relatives of the person who Public Works took it off, and so we actually took nearly 3 months to find the actual owners who aren't in the district any longer, and their response came back that they were not interested in the property at all, which we've kept as a reference.
Cool. Right. That's interesting. Good news, potentially. Alistair.
Sorry, is this where you want me to raise the action item for Underhill Road?
No, that's next, but under extraordinary business, which will be D2. Brenda.
Yeah. Thank you, Alex. Bryce, question to you. Now that we know that there is some contamination on that land, is that being put on the limb?
Yes, and it's also been classed as a slur site. So we have covered our bases and everything. I actually had a meeting this morning with the consultants who gave us the contamination report just to clarify a few things before this meeting. So I was a bit late. So yeah, so no, we're on top of all this, covering our bases.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Cool. Pip, did are you waving to someone or?
She's off on an appointment.
All right. Goodbye. See you later, Pip. If you guys want to lower your hands, Alistair and Brenda, and so I assume that we can then move on to. Are there any other questions before moving on? So then we'll do D2, which is an additional agenda item, Steph, which is extraordinary business, Alistair Plimmer, Ari Underhill Road. Alistair, do you want to tell us, do you have a resolution or is it information?
Yeah, so the issue of Underhill Road is that it goes from Featherston right through to Greytown, and of course there's no bridge there. So we've got Underhill Road in Featherston, and we've got Underhill Road in Greytown. There was a query from residents about the naming of it, and that emergency services and mail and so on can easily get confused. And it's sort of going round and round in circles at the moment, and it would be really nice just to get a little bit of resolution to this. And the simple answer is that the feedback I've had from residents on the Greytown side is they don't want a name change. They would just like clarification. And it would seem to be logical just to go Underhill Road North and Underhill Road South. And that will solve the problem, and people keep their name of Underhill Road. We had a big report done that actually didn't achieve very much. And I'd like to actually have a council resolution to proceed this, to get this traction on this and get it resolved one way or another.
Right. Councillor Olds, perhaps you could give us an update on the Featherston Community Board of last night.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, yes, Alistair, we had a long debate about this last evening at Featherston Community Board. Apparently, it was an initiative driven by Greytown Community Board. I'm just not sure where we landed last night, Alex, I think, or Garrick. I think we resolved to sort of throw it back to them, and sort of, I wanted to take the paper off the table completely. And
it was done. That was done.
Yeah.
So basically, Featherston Community Board have said we, in their opinion, the status quo is fine, but if Greytown wants to change the name to Underhill Road North and leaving Underhill Road in Featherston as Underhill Road, it's entirely up to them.
There was a cost involved, obviously a reasonable cost of council officers' time, and also ratepayers' expense, which really could barely be justified, to be quite honest.
I'd agree with what Colin said here. It's basically the issue had been resolved as far as we're concerned, or there was no issue. Move on. Yeah. Cool. Do you want a new sign, Alistair?
Sorry?
Do you want a new sign?
No, I'm listening to comments because the residents of Underhill Road raised it. So I'm just following it along. And it seems to have gone round and round in circles, and costing a lot of money with no resolution.
Yeah.
Cool. Councillor West. No. Lee.
Yes, thanks, Alistair, for bringing this up. It has gone round and round and round. This first emerged about 4 years ago, I think, and didn't come for the residents. It actually was a very vague comment from the Postal Service. That was the original originator. And it was, at the time, we did ask residents what they thought, and they're quite happy with the status quo. We contacted the fire brigade at the time, and they didn't have any issues in terms of emergency services and so on. So in my view, I'd just drop it. I don't think there's any real need to have any changes, but that's just my perspective. But goes back at least 4 years from my memory.
Yeah. So I'm unsure of where we would go from here as a council. At the moment, it sits with the community board making a recommendation. I suppose the next council meeting we'd receive that, and possibly, but there's what additional process is required to be undergone, Russell, to resolve the issue? Oh, Amanda. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not 100% sure I'm going to answer the question you just asked, but just a commentary, and I'm still getting my head around everything, but if you've delegated the decision making to Greytown Community Board, you can't undelegate that decision making. Understanding orders, and they resolved to do a survey of residents in Underhill Road. That was the motion that was passed in the Greytown Community Board meeting last week.
So we'll just leave it to them for them to come up with a resolution, and we'll take that if it needs to come through to us in the future. Are we all comfortable with that? Yeah. Right, that's easy. We'll now move to item E, the Mayor's report. Do we have a mover to receive the report? Colin, seconded Pam. All those in favour, please raise your hand. All those against, the motion is carried. So there's a few things that I've attempted to tidy up and catch up on. The first one is to inform you that regarding the Wairarapa Economic Development Strategy with its new chair, Adrian Young-Cooper. Things are progressing well. There is a new chair for the skills part of that, which is Paul Southey from Greytown, who's also involved in Māori in business. The water strategy is being re-looked at with regards to the withdrawal of the consent for the Waimuka storage scheme and how that affects our water resilience strategy. The important one is that, and you remember that we discussed this last year regarding the position of the economic development strategy and destination Wairarapa, and that we all agreed and was passed within WEDS that we, by the other councils, that they would be co-located but separate. Out of that came a funding requirement for Business Wairarapa to assist the economic development strategy. Masterton had funded them, agreed to funding subject to the other councils funding their proportion or their share. Both Carseton and South Wairarapa said, you can't do this to us halfway through the first year of a long-term plan. We don't have the funding for this. It's to the tune of about $15,000. And so I've discussed with Wellington NZ, who have provisionally agreed to fund Carseton and South Wairarapa's part through to the end of June, so that we don't have any outlay outside of a funding round. And thereafter, we will need to discuss whether that $15,000 is able to sit within the annual plan budget. So I've let Stefan know that we need to throw that into the discussion, but at the moment, there's no need for us to be approving any funding for Business Wairarapa, which is the old Chamber of Commerce. Any questions on that? Yes, Colin.
So Alex, just to get it clear, then the funding from what source did you say?
Wellington NZ, which
Yes,
is
so,
the current holder of the budget from the economic development rate.
Yep. So that funding's been approved by them, and that, or is that still pending?
It is. I haven't got a letter to say that, and it's just a matter of catching up with John Allen to make sure. But as far as I'm concerned, it's a bit of a done deal.
Okay. Thanks very much, Tara.
Yeah. Second one, which is actually kind of interesting, the petition from Mayor Hazelhurst regarding speed limits on open roads, which is something that's a matter of discussion in the Wairarapa as well. Hopefully you've read that, and I suppose my question is, would this council like for me to sign on their behalf such a petition? Questions? Comments? Yeah, Alistair.
Yeah, look, in reading it, I was very concerned that Waka Kotahi takes a very narrow view on the subject and doesn't take into account economic realities of the district. And we have had a very robust discussion, as Pam will attest, as to the impacts that happens on State Highway 2 and how that will impact upon our feeder roads into it. Logically, that if you suggest that the state highway should be the best and safest road in the district, being a state highway, then everything then flows from that. And so you might find that it might be, if you took that to a logical conclusion, then coming out from the coast, it might be actually safer to go by horse and cart than a car, because the speed limits would be so low. So, you know, we need to get some reality brought into Waka Kotahi's thinking around this, and I totally support what the Mayor Hazelhurst is saying, that you can't, the Waka Kotahi just can't take an isolated view of road to zero without actually taking into account impacts far further aside, particularly the economic impacts. And when you look at the Wairarapa, for example, that is spread quite a long distance, arbitrarily changing the speed limit without taking everything into account seems to be a very narrow and silly way of looking at it, because it will just create frustrations. So I would support signing it.
The other problem, and I know you've raised it and I've raised it, is that it's a blanket around New Zealand, which doesn't relate back to statistics on deaths and accidents. To my mind, and I understand where they are in this, that they have a target that the Parliament has set or that's been agreed to, and they don't have the money for median barrier strips to achieve that. So the other way of doing it is very cheap, which is to reduce the speed limit. But it's not taking into account economic or statistical facts to support that decision. So I do have a bit of an issue with it as well, and I have raised it with them, but I'm also mindful of their rock and a hard place situation. Other comments from councillors? Okay. Well, you want me to sign this on your behalf? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Well, there we go. What about you, Lee? You're okay. Okay. I will go ahead and forward that, sign that, and let Sandra know of our decision. The next item is, which we've already discussed, and we just tabled for confirmation, a list of appointments for this year. There is one that needs to be discussed, which is a representative on the Waihini. It's not Waihini Action Group. The Waihini Floodplain Management Steering Group. At the moment, we have we have 2 councillors that are suitable and knowledgeable enough to be on that, but we have a current non-council member as a representative, and I'm just opening it up. Probably Colin, you may be able to assist.
Yeah, so thanks, Alex. Yeah, it's an interesting group, and there's certainly been a huge amount of work done to get to the stage we're at the moment. Now, Colin Wright has served as a councillor rep on there, and also served as on the Wairarapa Action Group. I haven't had an opportunity to have a conversation with Colin prior to this meeting, but his knowledge is immense in terms of assisting us going forward. I want to go back to Colin, if he's not an appointee from council, as you've already alluded us to, Alex, that we've got 2 elected representatives on that table now. It's probably a bit of an overkill having Colin as well, but I certainly want to have the opportunity to have a conversation with him and tap into that knowledge base. I think it's really critical moving forward.
Yeah, so it's really just whether or not you or Rebecca would pull back to allow him to remain, or whether you think the knowledge base can be retained and you 2 sit on that. So
well, it's important that Rebecca, I understand, is constrained by time, and even during the process of the hearings and hearing the submissions, is that a point was made to me that Rebecca hadn't attended any of the meetings, and I'm just wondering if she shares the same level of commitment in terms of, I know it's not arduous, and it may well be that she's the appropriate person, but if not, then I'd suggest that Colin remain on there.
Well, we might hold that over and allow you to make that decision, and then let us know at the next council meeting.
Okay, that'll be great. I'll have a conversation with both.
To everyone. Yeah. Brenda.
Yeah, I was going to suggest, rather than just make a decision right here and now, that actually talking to the other 2 first would be the preferred option. You don't just go and kick people off just because you can. Thanks.
Right, and the other issue we have is, and I'm not sure, the Community Awards Working Party. Do we have to remove one member? I'm looking at this and it looks like we, Steph, could you let us know what the issue is there?
Just open up the terms of reference, but my understanding was that the terms of reference provides for one councillor. Let me just have a little look. Sorry, I'm not. Yeah, so the mayor, a chair of each community board, chair of Māori Standing Committee and one councillor. And at the moment, I believe both Councillor Colenso and Councillor Eames have been appointed to that party.
At the moment in the proposal, we're looking at just Councillor Colenso. Garrick, are you okay with that?
Yeah, it sort of was news to me, but yeah, I can do it. But how much time is going to be involved?
No, we actually, we're proposing that you're not on there. It's only Councillor Colenso that's on there.
That's fine.
There's not a lot of, in fact, because of COVID, we're well behind the 8 ball on this. And I was hoping to have this actually awarded and out in August. And that just has collapsed through the process. So it is something we need to action relatively quickly.
No, if Pam's available, that'd be great.
Lee?
Just to let you know, I'm happy in an unofficial capacity to help Pam in any way that I can. I've been involved in the awards in the past, so just sing out, Pam, if you need a hand at any stage.
Cool.
That's
yeah.
All right. Cool. So if we're all happy with that, then do we have a mover to approve the councillor appointments for 2022 as per Appendix 3? Moved by Councillor Jepson, seconded by Councillor Eames. All those in favour, please raise your hand.
Alex, just before you put that to the vote, would you like me to add in the addition of Colin Wright on there, and that would be deferred until the next meeting? Was that the?
Yes. Okay, that's a nice tidy way of doing it. So we'll approach that. We can pass this, but then revisit it at the next council meeting.
Sure.
Good. Then the motion is carried. The next one is actually relatively potentially controversial. Is the group that has been created called the Declaration Invitation for Three Waters Reform. So Communities for Local Democracy. If I can give you a bit of background on this one, this started out with 2 mayors that objected strongly right at the beginning on Three Waters Reform. And they employed two consultants to begin a bit of a campaign to change the information that was being provided by the government with regards to Three Waters Reform. It has grown to 28 out of the 67 councils around the country. There is a monetary component where if you join in with this, you pay $15,000 to contribute towards advertising and research. And I need to pass on that invitation to you, councillors. I feel that things have moved on a lot since then, that the steering group looking at the government's proposal, their decision will be due out at the end of next month, and with an independent chair. I'm not sure which way that's going to fall, but I also know that we don't have $50,000 in our budget to actually join, and whether or not it would fracture LGNZ. There's been a lot of warnings by the chair of LGNZ saying this shouldn't occur. But I'm open to your comments. Colin, you've got your hand up already.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Alex. And it's interesting. I've come in on the 12th hour, a lot of this stuff other than following it outside council. I saw something come through from Local Government New Zealand the other day, which really pleased me, because the information I was getting that Local Government New Zealand had basically rolled over and and agreed to what the government was proposing. So there was some information came through the other day from LGNZ. I was pretty impressed about that. Prior to that, I'd got information from Garrick about to try and bring myself up to speed a little bit, and some of the reports are very, very comprehensive. It's I'm caught between a rock and a hard place because I'm very loyal to local government New Zealand, and I think that they've done a wonderful job in the past. But have they fallen short on representing the views of councils throughout New Zealand? I guess that's the question. So I'm keen to hear from others.
In response to that, actually, I must correct myself. For a rural council, it's 10,000, not 15,000. LGNZ have apologised, in as much as perhaps they should have put more thought into the heads of agreement that they signed with the government prior to entering into discussions at that steering group level. We can't undo that. However, since then, they have been very much a critic of the government's role. So, yeah. Any other thoughts from councillors? Yeah, Brenda.
In my personal opinion, I do believe that LG did act rather slowly to respond to the needs of the members there. It took them months to actually acknowledge the fact that they'd acted, jumped the gun a bit too much. So yeah, I'm not quite sure if this fresh ideas, local democracy, is the right path either. So it's a bit of a hard place to be in.
Alistair.
I'm a little bit like Colin on this. I think local government New Zealand has apologised for the position they've taken, but of more concern to me is that as a council, we haven't had a robust discussion about what was presented in the start in the public arena. So I think our community is somewhat unsure of where we as a council sit on this issue. And I think we owe it to our public first to say, given the information that we have, where we sit. I know we sent in a whole lot of questions at the last time. We've had no answers to those, of course. So that makes it very difficult. So I certainly, my own personal view is, given that we have nothing definitive back, so I am still against the proposals that have been made to date and the mandating of those proposals. But I think rather than joining anything like 4 Communities for Democracy, we are better off working still through LGNZ. But more importantly than that, we need to send a signal to our community that on the best information that we have, this is where we as a council are sitting at the moment. That doesn't mean it's definitive. That doesn't mean it's not going to change if information comes out. But certainly when you read the tea leaves out there, I think there is a lack of understanding about where we as a council sit at the moment.
Yeah,
I think it would be really good to have perhaps a meeting on Three Waters and provide our community some form of understanding where we as councillors are currently sitting.
Yeah, and I think though that would require quite a workshop to nut out a combined view. To give you a bit more information, the government has admitted just last week that they haven't replied to us or to any councils regarding the questions that were raised, and that they're finally DIA is finally working to reply 3 months later. So, but it is very odd because most of the questions would have been the same. Garrett?
Yeah, just to recap what everybody else is saying, I think that the 8 weeks consultation was an absolute game. It was just pretend. We didn't have the information. We couldn't consult. The MOU was farcical. We never saw what was going on until after the event. The questions have still not been answered. However, you go back the other way and say, well, maybe we should hang on till we see what comes out in the governance review. I'm also aware that the regional group is meeting. We haven't been approached yet at all. And I thought if there's a regional study group put in place, they would actually come back to some of the rural councils to ask us what our point of view was. And I take Alice's point, the community is looking for leadership. We had some very robust discussions with various rural sectors, and I think that's where our strength is. We should be actually in a position where we know what it means for us. Personally, we've also been approached. You can actually join this group in your own right if you wish, which is basically taking an anti-Three Waters position, which I'm very tempted to do because with what's on the table now, I'm very anti. And there's still another maybe 3 or 4 months to go, and to close. I'm not even convinced Three Waters is going to go ahead in the format we know. So
we've just had the second delay from the government, which is certainly interesting in a government that is pushing through quite firmly on other legislation. To see 2 delays in a row. To be fair as well, though, we did lobby and got Mayor Patterson onto the steering group looking at the structure of the entities. At the moment, the government has only mandated that 4 entities will be created. Nothing more has been passed. So I'm hoping that Lynn will give us a heads up and lobby correctly on behalf of our council, but also as one of the smallest councils in New Zealand, our ability, it's more things are being done to us, not with us. Unlike Auckland, we have very little sway in the way things are progressing.
I'd like to see Lynn's paper because that's going to be the end of March. So
it will be an update, yes, but the updates have to come from the chair, not so they're sworn to secrecy up until that occurs.
I appreciate that. But also, I'm upset that we were asked to do all these questions, and as you say, nothing's come back, no response.
The first time I've seen it was just last week when they said we will actually reply. Yeah. So yeah, I'm very negative about. We can revisit this at any stage. I don't think this is going away. Jeppy.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. No, most of my queries have been answered. I'm with Garrick on this. I think we do need to wait to see what this review committee comes up with, and then we might be able to set some direction as how we can get out there among our ratepayers and have a discussion around
it. Councillor Hay.
Thanks, Alex. Look, I've been very underwhelmed with the way LGNZ have handled the whole process, and I think they just rolled over very quickly and early on. I also am concerned that people in our communities don't really understand what our position is, and there's a lot of confusion out there. And while Three Waters reforms may not go ahead, it's certainly in its current form, there's a side of me a bit like Garrick that I actually would be quite keen to join this group. We're a small voice, but this is one of 27. And it's interesting if you look at the names of all the different councils who have signed it. And as a rural sector council, it would just be 10,000. It might be the best 10,000 we spend on telling our community what our position is. Initially, I was very against joining it, but I think gradually over time, given the fact we haven't had our questions answered after 3 months and numerous other issues, I'm erring towards this way. But I mean, I'd go with the majority on that one, but it's where I'm sitting at the moment.
Thanks, Lee. Pam.
My initial thought was that we should sign this, but I've given it a lot more consideration, and I feel that because we haven't had the chance to consult with our communities, we don't actually know what their thoughts are on this. And so signing something on behalf of our communities when we haven't had a chance to consult with them, I think is being a little presumptuous on our part. So in that way, I would change my mind and say I'd like to leave this on the table to hear what happens with the committee that Lynn Patterson is on, and to also have our questions answered from DIA. And then once we've got that information, have been able to talk to our communities, then we make a decision as to whether we spend the money and join them, or whether we just send our thoughts through to DIA and the government about what we actually think as a community, without spending any money. So, I think that the deferral at this stage.
Cool. And I think that it fits in with mine. We did delay telling the community what our thoughts were when we were pending the responses from our questions, and 3 months later we haven't been able to tell the community because we haven't had those questions answered. I would also like this to be public discussion, and a good way of, while you don't want to get into public meetings about this, whether or not we engage research, but then you tend to get an answer based on misinformation from certain lobby groups that don't necessarily tell the full picture. Because sometimes, the reality is slightly different from what some groups are portraying. Garrick.
Yeah, just a quick one, Alex. My query would be: is it an either or? I'm looking at the list of people who belong. Have they actually withdrawn from LGNZ? Because then there'd be no budget concern.
Now, there's only one council.
My gut feel is they're waiting to see, also keeping their options open, because if you're still inside the tent, they could actually change. They could actually be in a position to make some changes to LGNZ and still have the others in support. So I just raise it as I don't think it's an either or.
The changes in local government will occur at the next AGM when they vote. This is a lobby group of 28 councils. Only one council has withdrawn from LGNZ. I think it was Timaru or something like that, as such, but it certainly does put you into a polarized position within any discussion group in LGNZ if you're a member of this group. Colin.
Yeah, Alex, have you had the opportunity to have a discussion with their adjoining councils in terms of their mayors, Lynn and Mayor Lang? And also, has this been discussed at Mayoral Forum as well?
No, it hasn't. It has been discussed at Entity C, which is our proposed fourth, one of the four entities. Both the Greg, Lynn and Wayne Guppy in Upper Hutt, none of them see the benefit of this, given that there's still discussions going on at the moment. As you can see, Tararua has signed on this, but they were very vocal and had quite a controversial photo taken regarding Three Waters, and I think there was a photo that said something very rude to the government from their councillors. So they were already polarised before this all started. So yeah, Alistair.
Yeah, Alex, you mentioned that perhaps any discussion should be in public, and I agree with that. I'm sure that amongst us as councillors, we've all read everything that's come through council, but there's been a lot of information that hasn't come through council that we've probably already read, and Garrick's prolific in this area. That has, come through federated farmers or through different organisations. So trying to having a workshop in public, I'm not sure would be a bad idea. I think it would be a good idea.
Do you know what I would suggest? That we actually schedule a public debate. And I've raised this with Lee that we should be doing this on regular, but where we actually allow 6 points of view to cover every facet of what this is all about. Sometimes they're quite useful, and that would be a very novel way of doing it. But you get for and against pretty quickly. But anyway, I perhaps we over time, let's email me with suggestions on how we engage with the public, apart from research, in an informative way.
I'd certainly still like to have a workshop so that at least we as councillors are all on the same sheet of music, so we're all talking about the same information, because if we're not, then we'll never get any idea of any sort of form of consensus, because we'll all have have had different information provided, and it's probably really important that we all actually sort of.
Shall we schedule that once the responses which have been promised now from the DIA are received?
Well, I think that's a good idea, because of course the responses in the DIA will say, "Oh, this has been delegated to the working group." This is to every question that we've asked. They'll just say this.
We don't know that, and we have said that they will guide our decision making. So yeah, we should possibly stick to that. Pam.
Alex, I think that's a very good idea to have a workshop with councillors, and looking at consulting with the community, maybe do it sector by sector. So you've got the vineyard people and you've got business people and things like that. So you're getting like-minded people talking about the subject from their point of view, rather than an open meeting where you've got all sorts of people doing it. So
you've just got to be careful of the cost of this, but hopefully it could be done outside of council offices.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we could actually have an organisation that might want to host or sponsor them. You know, like Rotary Lions or Federated Farmers or whatever. Russell.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, Alex, councillors. So it's a hard one, isn't it? Because lack of information, wanting the best for your community, the slowness of information flow back to help you with your decision making and position finding. So if you go for a workshop, there's probably more merit in having some key headings as reference points to make more of an effective meeting, such as knowledge base for the new entities, certainty, well, implementation component, certainty of delivery, proportional representation of small councils within the mix of a larger shaped entity. So things like that can anchor your thinking and help you pose back further questioning to the merits of the entities being set up.
Yep. Amanda, you have something.
Sorry, pop-ups over my microphone and you can't get to it. Apologies. Probably Russell has covered pretty much what I would have said. Just being really cautious of any public forum around what you're consulting on or what feedback you're seeking, and whether or not we have any control over the decisions. So, you know, noting this is the central government, it's legislation going through. You know, what are our opportunities to influence, and being really mindful around not over promising.
Yeah, cool. So therefore, if we all agree, we'll just raise this again in the next mayoral report, and the next one after that, until such time as we've received information from the DIA and can schedule some meetings. We're all good with that?
Mm-hmm.
Right, moving then on, I'm taking it as read. There's the meeting with the Farikaka Trust Board. There is Jobs for Nature, which I've mentioned there, and we will get more information. It's only at draft stage. Alistair, have you forwarded that through to, have you had a read through that document? Okay, so we were still working on that. There is a discussion about to occur following an approach from Rangatani Settlement Trust regarding large-scale solar farm in the South Wairarapa, which I'm fascinated by, but more information, it'll be commercially sensitive. but whether or not we're able to work with them on that. And then probably one of the bigger ones was the Rimataka Road Committee, where we discuss State Highway 2 from State Highway 58 through to north of Masterton. If you remember, I spoke with the Minister of Transport regarding the Waihinga Bridge that was declined eventually, that it hasn't been put onto the work schedule for replacement in the foreseeable future. I will be challenging that again. It's my pet project, and wherever I can, probably within the regional roading committee, regional roading committee. We did discuss speed limits, and we did put a shot across NZTA's bows regarding their consultation and the need for reduced speed limits through the Wairarapa. It was confirmed that 3 roundabouts will be occurring in the north of the Wairarapa at 2 within the Carson and at Norfolk Road, 1 before that at that new subdivision way, and 1 at the Wainawa bypass. I also raised the possibility of a roundabout in Greytown under their low cost, low something or other format, and that still is within the mix if it came in under a $2 million cost. So that was pretty much the overview of that. It was done by Zoom. It was poorly attended. Unfortunately, some of the key players that we usually like to see there weren't there. So but I'll keep you posted on any developments in that area. And that's it. Any other questions on that? In which case, I'll now move on to enter into public excluded. Oh no, no, we have Councillor Olds to speak on his report with the Waihini River Plan. Councillor Olds.
Yeah, I don't think there's any need to speak on it. It pretty much speaks for itself, Alex. So it was just a report. So no need to speak on it unless there's some questions.
Cool. And Alistair, do you want to talk to, or should we just take as read your Wairarapa Road Safety Council? It's quite a long document, actually.
Just take as read, but they're doing some really good work. Some very good work, actually, for the amount of money they get. They're punching very high above their weight. It's a very good organisation.
Cool. Excellent. Right, so we're now going to enter into public excluded. Do we have a mover to enter into public excluded as mentioned in the order papers, as per the reasons set out in the agenda? Do we have someone move that we go into public excluded? Jeppy, seconded Councillor Hay. All those in favour, please raise your hand. All those against, the motion is carried. Steph, if we could go off YouTube and